Thanks for joining this Healthcare for All Oregon meeting. We are coming to you from the Oregon Education Association building here in Medford, Oregon, and are the guests of Healthcare for All Oregon Rogue Valley chapter. I am Mike Huntington, a retired physician and chair of the Healthcare for All Oregon Speakers Bureau. Other speakers today include Mark Betts, a retired computer programmer from Corvallis, and he is the chair of the Mid-Valley Healthcare Advocates Outreach Committee. Bruce Thompson is a retired family practice doctor and chair of the Mid-Valley Healthcare Advocates Legislative Committee. Joe Graff is with the Healthcare for All Oregon Rogue Valley chapter and former Dean of Science at Southern Oregon University. Sandra Coiner, also from the Rogue Valley chapter, is a member of the HCAO board and on its legislative committee. She is former director of the honors program and freshman programs at Southern Oregon University. At 2 p.m. we will meet Dr. Samuel Metz, who will join us online. First, let's take a few minutes to think about why we are all here today at this webinar. I think it's because we want to bring universal health care to Oregon as soon as possible. We know from experience in our own country and others that the political windows of opportunity can open unexpectedly, and we want to be ready for that and even cause that window open. The most immediate task is to make sure we listen to and inform as many Oregonians as we can about the crisis in our healthcare system. Please refer to the documents and slideshows I sent to you by email on December 1st for ideas on talking with your legislators, canvassing, and messaging. You should have received 10 documents and 2 PowerPoint presentations yesterday. If you did not receive these resources, please contact me at mchuntington@comcast.net. I'm just using this as an example of the quality of the slides that you'll see when you open those programs. And this is a slide that appeals to the conservatives and the very liberal elements in our society. And it shows that on the downside, for all ages through age 65, we are at the bottom of 17 nations when it comes to life expectancy. Amazing. But what happens at age 65? Does anybody have an explanation? You're all muted, but I can still hear you. Yes. The answer is that if you do have access to health care, this is a patriotic sign. We must have the best healthcare facilities in the world to carry off this remarkable feat. So also, besides these slides, we'd like you to go to the Healthcare for All Oregon website. So let's take just a second to go through what you will find on the website. First of all, go to the site that allows you to sign on, if you haven't done it already, to become a member, individual member, or a sustaining member. The individual membership is $30 a year. And so please do either one of those. Then you can go to the Learn tab and you can see all the references there about movies, videos, stories, healthcare news. Under ACT, well, we'll get back to that. Under legislation, you can see the most current information about what is being proposed for universal health care in Oregon. Now back to ACT. So you can see the events, how to do house parties, local resolutions, and we'll stop here at Speak Up. And you can see the list of references here that are available to you, how to give a talk, organizing speech, slideshows, and so forth. but the most current slideshows are the ones that I just sent you yesterday. We're going to update what's on here. What are the talking points? If you want to see Sam again, you just go here and you get one of his talks, and then a variety of other talks about universal healthcare in here. The strategic goals for HCAO are 4, and you see 2 of them here, that people in Oregon are aware of and support publicly funded healthcare for all Oregon. So there's 2 of them, and the number 1 goal is the one we're focusing on today at this session. 3 and 4, Healthcare for All Oregon is actively pursuing all 4 of these goals with about a dozen active chapters and over 20,000 people who have signed their support for universal healthcare in Oregon. So we are doing the other parts of this. Just today, we're focusing on goal number 1. Just so that you know, Healthcare for All Oregon is planning to present meaningful legislation before the voters in 2020. In 2019, we expect to reintroduce the universal healthcare bill, not that it would get out of committee, but that we would get more legislators on board and expose the public and the media to the single payer bill. So among the things we want to focus on today is developing relationships with our legislators, influencing them, canvassing, conversing with others about universal health care, and developing and maintaining relationships among ourselves and advocates. So when Samuel Metz starts in just a bit, he will give us his ideas about building a relationship with your legislators well before you ask them to support a specific bill or issue. Then Sandra Coiner will give us her ideas about 2nd and 3rd visits, and that's when you ask for a specific action by the legislator. Then we'll have 10 minutes presentation on canvassing, and then the official webinar will end. We will now ask Dr. Metz to give us his ideas about building a relationship with your legislators.
Thank you very much, Mike. In this Persuasive speaking webinar, you'll learn much about how to improve your delivery when you present healthcare content. I'd like to make a preliminary point that may help with all of your audiences, but especially with legislators. I'll start with a story. Some years ago, as a very junior healthcare advocate, I decided to go straight to the heart of darkness. I went to 2 conservative legislators, both of whom are in your area, and decided together they would hear from me exactly why single-payer healthcare was the wave of the future. I got creamed. They gleefully skewered this naive, pin-headed Multnomah County Democrat who really needed updating on the value of the free market. At the end, they shook my hand, patted my back, said I could return any time for a second round. They had a great time. I did not. When I got home to my wife, Margaret, and wept into my white wine, she patted my hand and said, single payer will be built on relationships, not on information. This is the executive summary. Building a respectful and comfortable relationship with your legislator is an essential first step before you begin education and advocacy. Many of you already have respectful and comfortable relationships with your legislators, so this will be a bit of a review. For those of you who haven't had your first date yet, this will help. First, but do not attempt a first meeting during a legislative session or at your legislator's Salem office. Ask for an off-season meeting at her favorite coffee shop. If asked about your agenda, say you'd like to introduce yourself and talk about your concerns. When you arrive, thank her for her time and then introduce yourself, not just your name. Talk about your neighborhood, where you live, your family, your job. Give her enough information so she knows something about you as a human being. Then tell her about your primary concern, healthcare. And remember, you're talking about yourself, not about policy. For example, I'm worried I can't afford a major hospitalization, even though I have insurance. I'm worried that my co-pays and deductibles will bankrupt me, even though I have insurance. I'm worried that if I change jobs, I'll lose all insurance. And I worry that if I go to bed tonight and don't wake up, my family won't get any health care at all. You're talking about your concerns, not what your legislator should do. If she's smart, and most of them are, she'll thank you for being forthright. When you reach this point, congratulations, you've just concluded a successful first date. Let me give you a good example of a bad example, and it comes from my own first date experience and a first date gone bad. I was talking with a woman in whom I had a great deal of interest, and I was thinking about how to arrange a second date and many more after that. I asked the open-ended question, what are your plans for the future? She looked down at her watch and very dramatically said, by next Sunday, I want to be married. That was a showstopper. I swallowed hard, looked down at my own watch and said, I see our time is up. In just a few minutes, I need to be somewhere else. And a few minutes later, I was somewhere else. Now, this first date was being very honest. Can't fault her for that, but her timing was terrible. Likewise, on your first date with your legislator, don't wear your healthcare as a human right t-shirt. Don't bring your note cards with bills. Don't bring your note cards with key points about why single payer is the wave of the future. That's for the next time. But you can make 2 offers that will enhance your second date credibility. First, offer her a copy of T.R. Reid's The Healing of America, right here. You say, this book helped me understand a complex topic. It's readable, it's fun. Keep it, or when you're done, pass it on. You can get copies 2 ways. One is you can go to Amazon and pay $12, or you can come up to Portland and get a couple dozen copies from me. I order them by the gross and give them out like Gideon's gives out Bibles. The second offer you can make is to host a town hall in your living room for your legislator. Make the date and then fill the room. Don't worry about who's a single payer advocate or a Democrat or a Republican. Just fill your home, whether it takes 8 people or 20 people. And don't worry about the agenda. Just introduce your legislator and let her take it from there. Your neighbors will think you're a god because you speak directly with legislators in your own living room. And it will make it much easier to bring them back to your room for the next event. They don't know it, but it's going to be about single payer. Your legislator will remember that filled room for a long time. Then when you meet your legislator on the second date, your reception may range from, oh, you're Dr. Metz, healthcare, right? Let's talk, to, Sambo, baby, come to Papa who loves you, kid. Take a pew. What can I do for you? Or somewhere in between. Mostly your legislator is not going to use up any time figuring out who is this guy and why should I be talking with him. This brings us back to the executive summary. Your audience will pay much more attention to you after you've established a respectful and comfortable relationship. That's the first date. Please enjoy and learn from the meat of this webinar, which is how to make a complex topic comprehensible to all of your audiences. Thank you.
Sam, you got applause here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't hear the applause. So make it. Thank you very much.
Can you show him the group?
What?
Can you show?
I can see the group.
Oh, he can see the group. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Good. So, questions from those online. You're muted right now. If you can send them by chat, please do so. And questions from the group here in Medford for you,
Well,
Sam.
I see, by the way, on the chat, the name of the book is The Healing of America by T.R. Reid, R-E-I-D.
Oh, T.R. Reid, R-E-I-D. So I have to, let me get him. Say it again, Sam.
T.R. Reid, The Healing of America.
A few copies of that book.
Sam said
You can share.
it is.
Marty's showing hers.
It is T.R. Reid, The Healing of America.
And I see that Mickey Frank sent that out by chat. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay. So that's a question from Mickey Franks, from Lisa Morrison. Eric General in Hometown Hall is off session, I assume?
Yes, all of your interactions, initial interactions with your legislator should be out of session. You are guaranteed that if you try to see your legislator during the session, you will receive the minimum amount of time and attention. So get the relationship established in the most relaxed way possible. And that's in your hometown, in her hometown, off session, with as many neighbors as you can stuff into your living room.
Okay. Any other questions from the Rogue Valley group or from the online group? Sam, have you had any further contact with those legislators here?
I've had a lot of contact with my legislators and with a few others on the House Healthcare Committee. All of those contacts began casually, and that's where all relationships should start.
So tell me, and maybe somebody from Rogue Valley can have a similar question. How do I speak with Representative Mike Neerman, who won in a primary from a far right perspective? Should I even talk with him?
Funny you should ask. I have had many discussions with Mike Neerman in particular, usually accompanied by one of his constituents, Warren George, a member of Mid-Valley Healthcare Advocates. And Mike does a lot of listening, and he enjoys his discussions with it. Whether your legislator agrees with your point of view or not, your legislator will always appreciate a respectful relationship with somebody who votes and talks to other voters. Remember, if you can't get the information across, building the relationship is still valuable.
What would be your expectations with Mike Neerman or Senator Boquist, also a Republican, and the difference between the two?
That's calling for a little personal psychoanalysis, and I'm not sure I want to go quite there. But the expectation is that your legislator enjoys listening to your point of view and will welcome future points of view. For many of these legislators, they would sooner drive carpet tacks in their gums rather than actually dealing with healthcare. But if you can make it pleasant, respectful, and bring them fresh information, notably the T.R. Reid book, and they look at you and say, this person makes my life easier, I think you'll make progress and it'll be worth your investment.
Okay. We have a question from Wes Brain.
A comment. Some of the people in this room were involved with our campaign with the city of Ashland, which started with, in fact, we have a counselor, Carol Boyston's in the room now. She's not on the council any longer with Ashland, but so was Pam Marsh. And when we first met with Pam Marsh, Sam, we did it casually, and we met with each counselor at least 2 or sometimes 3 times, and this led to relationship building. And guess what? She's our state representative now, and I think it's come home to roost. We have a wonderful representative in Pam Marsh, so that's how it worked in Ashland, and some of the people in the room were involved with that. Thank you. Thank you.
Wes, that's an excellent example. So while we figure out how to get that question asked so I can hear it, there are 2 comments on chat. One is what to do about legislators who are already sold on single payer. Build the relationship with them. Let them know that you're watching. Thank them for their efforts so they feel appreciated. And visit them often, if no other reason than to tell them they're doing a great job and you want them to continue. There's another question about lobby days. I heard a legislator refer to that, lobby days, as speed dating. Lobby days may be valuable for getting certain points across, and perhaps there'll be a place for it in the future, but that's not a place to meet your legislator. That should be done out of session, hometown. I'd also like to comment on what Wes Brain said. That's a great example of pre-need planning. You never know who's going to be your next legislator, and boy, people pay a whole lot more attention to single payer before they're in the legislature than afterwards. So, Wes, thank you for making that comment. Please be active with all candidates, not just current legislators.
Thank you, Sam. We dismiss you in favor of Sandra. Is that okay?
Thank you all very much. I had a great time and hope you did too.
Sandra. Sandra Coiner will talk about your 2nd and 3rd visits.
So, let me this. Oh, okay. I'm intrigued by the difference between our 1st and 2nd visit as constituents and the legislators' 1st or 2nd or 3rd visit with somebody who's coming from HCAO. And one of the most important things to remember about our area and the people in this room is that we have a full range of legislators, ranging from the progressive to the arch conservative. And there is no one-size-fits-all approach to your 2nd and 3rd visit. Although I would agree with Sam that the way to start with the 1st visit is on a very personal level. So some of our sitting legislators and pretty much all the Democratic candidates I met in the election are very supportive of single payer. How many people in this room have a Democratic representative, maybe even senator? And how many have a Republican representative and maybe okay? I think we're just a shade over 50% Republican represented in this room. And those visits are going to be very different. Our sitting Democratic elected senators and representatives, it's basically one of each, and they centered in Ashland, already know a lot about single payer. They've already had 1st visits from a lot of people who have told them about their healthcare stories and asked them for their support for single payer. Some of our Republican representatives in our district may never have had anybody visit them to talk about single payer. And certainly, the first thing that I want to do is ask everybody to think about your particular representative and your particular senator and where they stand and what you know about them. And then formulate the goals for your second and third visits based on where they're starting from and where you think you can move them. These vary, and if you, in a while, I'll get to talking what those might be. So if you whip out this page called 9 Steps for Talking to Your Oregon Legislator that you got when you came here, it should be on your table. This is a compilation. I put it together from several sources, including one that said there were 4 steps, but I think there are 9 steps. Because what I want you to do today is start writing stuff down after numbers 1 and 2 on that list. The first question is, what do you want to know? You first think 2 questions are about research. You need to do some research about your legislator before your second visit, and you need to do some research about healthcare for all before your second visit. And that should be organized research, where you have questions that you want to answer, and so you do your research to find answers to those questions. So the first set of research will be about your legislator. And let me ask the room, what do you want to know? What do you want to find out about your legislator in this research phase before your second visit? What do you want to know? You want to know if they've been in legislature a while, how they voted on things that are related to universal health care. You know what else I want to know? I want to know before or while you've been a legislator in your local community, what local projects have won your heart? Did you help get a local small park? Did you help with a fundraiser for a charitable organization in your area? How are you connected to your community so that when you go in for your second and third visit, you can mention that and indicate that you support something that you know that your legislator already supports. Legislators are interested in community building and in charitable work, and that you take the trouble to find out what they've already contributed to, you could get on the same page with them, even if they are the Senate Minority Leader, or we've got a lot of prominent Republicans in our area. What else would you like to know about your legislator? Margie?
Dark money, campaign money.
Where they get their campaign money, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. You may not want to indicate to them that you know that, but that'll help you figure out some things about where they're coming from. Another thing I think you ought to know, we all ought to know, is what committees are they on? That'll indicate what other areas they're interested in. And since we're building a relationship, we care about our representative as a person with more going on than just a chance to vote on a couple of healthcare bills every session, right? What else do you want to know? How about how old their kids are? How about how long they've lived in the district? If you're going to build a relationship, it's just like anything. It's worth it to do research to find out who they are as a person and who they are as a political actor. So that's 1A for me. What kinds of things do you want to know? And if you've got one of these papers and you write things down in the margins or the sides, that's good. Help to remember that. And what I hope is we will have HCAO legislative contact teams in every district in our area, and we can get together with the other people in our area, expand our lists and get a pretty good list for each legislator and share our knowledge about our legislators so that when we go for our visits, we're all up to speed. But part 1B on my paper is, where do you get this information? I put on the paper 2 online sources. One is the official state legislative source, which this is where you can find out their committee memberships, for example, and where you can find out their voting records. And you can find whatever information they wanted to put on their state page. And Ballotpedia is another national source that has good information on Oregon legislators. Is it on there? Ballotpedia.org. With both of them, I didn't type out, line long URLs. You can, if you're at all fearless with your computer, just get on there and poke around until you get the page for your legislator. They're in there, both of those big sources. So where else? Carol.
OpenSecrets.org.
OpenSecrets.org. Good, write that down. Wes, where else?
Sharing our personal stories, many of us, as an example,
Wait.
new Senator Jeff Golden. There's people who maybe in this room have known him for 20 years or longer.
Oh, right.
And to share our stories ahead of time so we can collectively know Jeff Golden.
Talk to other people who know your legislator, right? Find out what they know. Does anybody live in a place that has a newspaper? Yeah? If you go back in their archives, you might be able to find some interesting stuff about your legislator. Okay. So I hope you'll write down what would be good sources for your particular legislator and be able to follow through on them with your team. To know what bills are pending and what HCAO's position on those bills are is a little different and it's a little easier. Just send an email to Charlie Swanson. His email is on this page. Tell him you want to get on the list for his information for legislative constituents. And here on the back of this 9 steps is an example of what Charlie sent out on August 1st. These will be updated. If you get on that email list, they will be updated after the legislature is in session. This session, a number of bills are going to be introduced related to universal health care, some of which we're going to like, some of which we're going to hold our nose and pretend we like. But you can get the information on healthcare bills and HCAO's position on them just by subscribing to that email list. So what are your next steps? Step 3, if you're going to have a meeting, you got to schedule a meeting. How do you schedule a meeting? You call them up. You be persistent. If they don't give you a meeting, you call them up again. You call them up locally. You call them up in Salem. But you persist. You don't say, oh, they won't meet with me. And I think Sam Metz's suggestions are great. Your second and third meeting can also be in the coffee shop or in your living room. But you keep persisting in organizing the meeting. And if you can't even get to your legislator, but you get to their staff, often that is a very good thing. Not just second best, sometimes it's the best thing to get because you might get a more supportive staff member. When you're planning your second and third visit, plan what you're going to say and who will say it, rehearse, practice, stay within the time limits, and lead up each time to a specific ask. This is now about the goal, and the specific ask has to be tailored to who your legislator is. For a highly supportive legislator, we will probably have a bill and you want to ask that person to become a co-sponsor. That's a pretty high level. It's people who are really supportive, we're asking them to be our champions in the legislature. But that's what you do when you've got a dedicated person. You might have somebody you just want them to agree to learn more, agree to read a handout that you're going to leave. And in the worst case scenario, if you can get them to the point where they don't have a knee-jerk response, I don't support government takeover of healthcare. If you just get them so they will not say that anymore, that's progress, right? Or they say, it's going to cost too much, it'll bankrupt the state. If you can convince them that HCAO knows how it won't bankrupt the state, and in fact, our best thinking is it will save money for Oregonians. You can just convince them to stop saying, it costs too much. That's a victory. But you have to choose your goal based on who your legislator is, and that's what you find out in your first meeting and in all your research. So the good housekeeping afterwards is to make your notes, keep a record. HCAO Action follows legislative constituent contacts. You can send it in to HCAO Action, follow up with a thank you note, plan to meet several times a year, and point 9, stay active as a constituent contact team. Ideally, and the reason I wanted you to sit in these groups is ideally you will have a couple of real good co-workers in your district who will help you continue the relationship with the legislator. The people who will do the core work. This is going to be different depending on whether you think there are 3 and only 3 people in your district who would support universal health care, or whether you live in Ashland and there are a horde of people who will be happy to show our legislators that we support single-payer health care. But it is important not to be, Sam is right, do not plan your only meetings in the legislative session. For our supportive legislators, showing up in their office on lobby day is a good thing. Wear the t-shirt. Every time I visited an Ashland legislator, they said, wow, I'm so impressed that you took the trouble to come all the way to Salem. Yes, I know about you. I know about your organization. I know about what you want. And we're there and we're a sea of red in front of them. That's not going to be the case with every legislator. But for all legislators, it's important to meet with them outside of lobby days. Dave. It's on the February 1st, is it? Yeah. Okay. February 1st. I think we'll probably have a lobby day, but you should meet with them before that. Meet with them before, during every campaign, before and after every session. Those are good times. They expect to hear from you, and you can do it, no matter who they are. Talk to them about the ball field they love. Talk to them about the charity they love, and then tell them why universal healthcare is so important to you, and what you would really appreciate if they would do for the citizens of Oregon moving towards single-payer healthcare. Do you have any questions? Bill and Shirley Welsh have some of those Republican reps, and they have been in constant contact with their Republican reps since they moved to our area. And they're going to do a little role play for us on what they did and maybe even tell us what they learned.
Yeah. Yeah, put it halfway between you.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. I'm Bill Welsh. My wife, Shirley Weathers, she has a different name, but we are separate people and have separate names. We're going to do a quick composite of both visits or of our contact with our legislator in the House, Representative Mike McLean. We moved here in 2013. We went up to Salem and did a lobby day, actually, and got to meet him. When we walked in, I'm playing us, Shirley's playing Mike McLean. Thank you for meeting with us today, Representative McLean.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you, but I do have to say before we get started that we really only have maybe 10 minutes here, and I may be called out and have to go make a vote. So let's get started.
Okay. Well, we're constituents of yours.
Right, and you live where?
We live on the Butte Falls Highway, 1 mile up Butte Falls Highway in Eagle Point.
Do you happen to know Hank Rodemaker?
We do. He's just over the fence from us. Yes, we know him.
Really, I went to high school with him.
Oh,
Great guy,
okay.
great
Yeah.
guy.
Well, we have a number of concerns, but we want to get into our healthcare concerns because that's the main reason why we're here. We were self-employed for 15 years, and we had to pay our own health insurance. So when you're self-employed, you pay the employer's part and the employee's part, and it's really crushing to a small business like ours. Now we're on Medicare. We love Medicare. We wish everybody had Medicare. We think since we got on Medicare and we're not as anxious as we were before, it really helped us out. And we believe that universal health care is something we want to keep working toward. We think Oregon's done a pretty good job, but we'd like to see it go further.
Well, I agree with some of your points. I can't go to universal health care, single payer. I'm not with you there. But I do want you to know that I voted for Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act. Some of my colleagues called me Rhino for doing that, but I did vote for Medicaid expansion. So I can agree with some of what you're saying.
That's great. Thank you for that. And then did you vote for the Cover All Children?
I sure did.
Okay,
That
thank
was
you.
another one.
Okay, our first meeting is over. How do we stay in touch so we're really get to share information?
Well, a couple of things. Email is probably the best way, but please remember, don't send me a whole bunch of papers. Don't send me attachments. Don't send me all that stuff. Keep it short and sweet. And always remember to put constituent somewhere in the subject line so that I can be sure and focus on your communication.
Okay, have a good day. So we left that meeting. Now we're in our second meeting. Representative, it's good to see you again.
Oh, hi, you know Hank Rademacher, right?
That's right. We're neighbors. So we wanted to talk today about a bill before you, Senate Bill 1046, which is a single payer bill. And we think we've had some input into that bill. We know it's before you. We hope you're going to be able to support it when it gets to the House.
Well, I'm going to have to look really carefully at that because I know single payer is going to cost a lot of money. And I don't think we have that kind of money. We're dealing with shortfalls already. So I'll just have to be honest with you. I kind of have my doubts that I'm going to be able to support it.
Okay, appreciate your honesty. Are there areas you think that the Republicans and the Democrats can agree, maybe in an incremental way? We're hearing a lot about pre-existing conditions. Do you want to address that problem?
Well, I'm kind of hoping that in whatever we do with healthcare, that we retain what we've got now in terms of pre-existing conditions. But I don't know beyond that. The single payer issue is kind of takes us in different directions that I have my doubts.
Well, the legislation does call for a phase-in, and it does call for a lot of study about where the funding can come from. It's not a done deal, I admit that, but we hope you'll be open to that, and we'll be giving you more information and sending you emails. It's a long way from Salem to Eagle Point, so we can't get up to see you too much, but we will be sending you information, letting you know where we think, and we hope you can be supportive of universal health care.
Well, I appreciate you coming. I know it's a long drive, but I really appreciate you coming, and I'll be happy to read whatever you send.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice day.
So I'm now going to ask you to go into breakout sessions, and here's what we would like you to do. Two types of exercise. The first one that was outlined by Sam Metz and later by Sandra, your first visit. This is your first date. And remember, you're not going to ask your legislator to get married within a week, right? And then go through the second exercise is that you are already acquainted with each other, and you know the Rademakers, and that he supported the city park, and you're going to present a specific question. So please go through that exercise, maybe 3 at a time.
Thank you much.
So we do not have any questions yet online, but let's see what questions or comments you have had here in the Medford group. Lessons learned, problems you have discovered going through this exercise.
One of the things that I thought of as we were talking about it, playing the role of the legislator, is the study that was supposed to be made. And we served a couple $100,000 and we were going to study this and get back to the legislature.
Right,
on that.
right.
You know where that is?
Yes, the question from the group here is, one member is asking, what happened to that study that the Oregon Health Plan or the Oregon Health Authority contracted for $400,000? What happened to that? That was a RAND study. It was completed in 2016 and offered to the legislature at the next session. And what it showed is that for the amount that we are now spending in premiums, out-of-pocket, co-pays, high deductibles, for that amount, we could substitute into a common fund that would cover everybody in the state, regardless of their status, would prevent or protect them from financial disaster at no greater cost. So that's the RAND Corporation. It's a respected organization. We think they understated the costs, but we are glad to say that they said for no more, we could cover everybody.
Understated the savings. Yeah. Not the cost.
Oh.
They understated the savings.
They understated the savings, sorry. So we think that it would save, that it would cost less to cover everybody under a single payer plan, which they studied and compared to the status quo and one other plan.
Since then, isn't there a current work group in the legislature that's working out
Yeah.
some details of
So-
the possibility?
So Bonnie McLean of Ashland asked, has there been a work group studying the possibility of universal health care? And yes, there has been. It was formed by the legislature. It's met every month since February. Its charge was to outline the steps necessary to reach universal health care for our state. They had an excellent crew of people, including Sam Metz that you just saw, and Charlie Swanson from Eugene, people from the insurance industry, 3 representatives. And unfortunately, they got sidetracked into incremental side steps. What about a Medicaid buy-in? What about more subsidies for insurance premiums? And so I think the main accomplishment of this work group is establish relationships among HCAO, for one thing, and Tom Sinsick, our president, spoke frequently at that group. So we've gained that relationship. With Sam Metz and Charlie Swanson there, there's been discussion of what a true public single payer system would be like. They have that in their brains. We have contacts with them, but when they're not going to tell the legislature that single payer is a good idea this year.
So the final report's not out.
Oh, yeah, here's Bruce.
Okay, so the final report from that work group is not out. It should be out within the next month probably, and you can look for it on OLIS, Representative Salinas work group, and there'll be, you'll click on meeting materials, and that report will be posted there eventually, but it's not there. I checked just the other day. So yeah, look for it.
Will you post a link on the HCAO website?
Good idea.
Yep, good suggestion.
Question here.
Yeah.
Our group, I had a very tough conservative. And yeah. Okay, he couldn't empathize. And he was committed to capitalism being the value that he carried instead of equalitarianism. So how do you begin to break through that? I can't figure it out. He was tough.
Does anybody in the group here want to answer that question? A member really values capitalism and thinks that could solve every problem. Sandra? Or?
Yes, yes. So we're concerned about, okay, as far as we have some progressive representatives, and still a new problem that's come on, push from Washington, D.C., is this phrase Medicare for all, how it's being taken over by people who are fighting hard for the public option, how they're coming up with their own definitions of what Medicare for all means, and in fact defining it as keeping the insurance companies on board. So this is something that our legislators are going to be hearing about from Democrats across.
One of the attachments that I sent you yesterday, and the front side is applicable to everybody in the state, and on the back side it's our local state senator and representative, and you would have to fill in your information for that locally. So we are about 10 minutes, actually 20 minutes beyond our schedule. And those of you locally who need to take a break, please do, but I think we ought to go right on into talking about canvassing.
And people remotely can continue.
Oh yeah, and those of you online, you're welcome to stay on as observers, and We'll try to make the audio and video accessible to you, but if it turns out that it's not, then feel free to leave, but feel free to stay on.
But there'll be a recording.
Oh yeah, and there will be a recording of this that we'll send to you. So I'm going to share the screen now for the next slides. So we'll try to make this as big an image as we can. Can you see the people there gathered? All right, let's go to the next one. We can overcome the giant with simple means. Listening to people and sharing our stories, something Goliath is not good at. As you listen to my presentation, please jot down questions and send them to us through the chat bubble at the bottom center of your screen. Knock Every Door canvassing was created in the wake of the 2016 election by former Bernie Sanders staffers and other progressives. A similar system had been used to raise Mr. Sanders from name recognition of 3% in 2015 to winning 47% of the delegates in the primary in 2016. And so the National Nurses United has adopted that method of going knocking every door. And it is a very simple, relatively stress-free method. You don't have to look on the van and see which door to knock on or send in complicated reports on the political aspects of it. Your main goal is to listen, and you introduce yourself and then listen. That's pretty easy on you and on the person at the door. In our experience, there's been someone home about half the time, and of those who come to the door, about half are willing to talk, to tell you about their experience with the healthcare system. If nobody's home, just leave a bookmark or some other form of literature specific to what you're interested in. And one of our most active volunteers in Corvallis now is a woman who wasn't home when Corvallis went for a city resolution. She came home the next day and saw it, and she called us right away. She had been in finance at HP a few years before, had a headache, felt nauseated. She was going to drive herself home, and she got halfway there and said, "This is pretty much of a serious headache, and I have insurance. I think I'll go to the emergency room." She was having a ruptured berry aneurysm. So when they took her into the ER, they life flighted her to Portland, and 3 years later, she gets this little bookmark on her door. She remembers that had she not had access to healthcare, she would not be alive. She is now chair of our finance committee of healthcare.
She would have decided to not go to the ER.
Yeah.
That's why.
She would not have gone to the ER. She would have slept it off for a long time had she gone home. So National Nurses United is the largest union and professional association of registered nurses with more than 150,000 nationwide. It's leading this Knock Every Door campaign. As you know, nurses are the most respected and trusted people in our society. So here's how you lead a Knock Every Door campaign. First, you recruit canvassers and plan to have fun. Use canvassing as a bonding activity for healthcare advocates in your community. You can study the National Nurses guidelines. There's a host guide, and there's plenty of copies over here. There's a sample agenda if you're hosting a canvass in a certain neighborhood. There's a script that you can use, and it starts out, "Hi, my name is Mike Huntington. I'm a volunteer with National Nurses United." You can say that because we're working with them. And Healthcare for All Oregon Rogue Valley, whatever you wish to say that you are doing. And I'm talking with neighbors today about healthcare and legislation called, and you can put in what you want, Medicare for all, universal healthcare. And we want to know what you think. It could be any variety of that. Chances are they will want to talk if they come to the door. Next thing you do is create maps. So how many have gone to Google Maps? You click on Google Maps or any other program, and you can print out a map of the neighborhood you want to visit. So this shows sort of a 10,000 foot view, and you pick out the blocks you want to start at, and then you do a 5,000 foot view that you can't see here, but shows individual houses. And we ask people to put little marks next to it. What happened at that door? Story, are they willing to join Mid-Valley or Healthcare for All Oregon? And there's record sheets that you can use to keep track of that. So you advise your canvassers to bring comfortable shoes, clothing, water, pick a time that's convenient, weekends are best, prepare clipboards, canvas for, first you meet for an hour to go over the plan and then rehearse, role play. Then you canvas for 2 hours. You come back and you tell your war stories. It's quite entertaining often. In one house that you saw where Stan was standing in front, he gave us a long story about what it's like to churn in and out of Medicaid or churn in and out of private insurances. And he was willing to send us a video of his comments, which he did. So then you photograph the pages of your contact information, you send it to your local data gatherer or HCAO, and Nurses National United wants you to do that also, and the instructions are there for that. So we want you to practice this in a very short breakout session, imagining one of the three of you being the canvasser, one being at the door, and the other one is the evaluator, a kind evaluator with suggestions on how you might improve your approach next time. So,
comment about
yeah.
nothing. So this technique is the technique that was used to elevate Bernie from an unknown person to a known person in the last presidential election. So all of that stuff that you saw about Bernie was a result of this kind of a campaign. And in fact, the campaign leader, Becky Bonds, who led that campaign, is now working with National Nurses United. And so she's bringing it to National Nurses United. And by participating in this, we are also pushing the national agenda.
So Becky Bond's video is in one of those links that I sent you originally, and we'll make it part of what we follow up with you later also. So
you're gonna do a demonstration, or you're gonna do that?
I think we don't need a demonstration. Yeah, just break into your groups of three again and take each role, maybe 5 minutes. In summary, build your relationships with your legislators now in your town before the session starts. Go to town halls, small group coffees scheduled by the legislator, one-on-one coffee dates. Legislators don't like speed dating during the session. Continue role-playing how you would gather and lead a group to lobby your legislators during the session. Look forward to and do canvassing as a fun local HCAO chapter pastime that will propel the universal healthcare movement like David propelled his stone. Hi, I am Mike Huntington, working with National Nurses United and Healthcare for All Oregon, asking your neighbors, and now you, how easy is it for you to get the healthcare you need? When talking with skeptics of universal healthcare, listen and find out their deepest concerns. When you tell your story, you can probably acknowledge those concerns and find common ground in answering those concerns. Now go forth and multiply. Recruit others to go with you. Find your unique skills and gifts to share with each other and get us closer to the day when all Oregonians can receive the health care they need without fear of financial disaster. Go to the Healthcare for All Oregon website to sign up as a member and sustaining donor. Research the articles, guidelines, messaging ideas, stories, and videos. We have 23 months to educate and persuade 1 million Oregonians to vote yes for universal health care.